This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
This is from Sheila. I'm not sure where she's listening, so probably the app. If Adam and Eve were immaculately made and they still sinned, I find it hard to believe that Mary was sinless. So again, she goes on, if Adam and Eve were created immaculate, why did they sin compared with Mary, who is immaculately conceived and full of grace, and she did not and could not sin? So why did Adam and Eve sin?
That's an astute question. That's a good question. So the difference here, the single difference is that, yes, first of all, Adam and Eve were created immaculately. They were the first, if you want to use the word conception, they were the first immaculate conceptions. It didn't make them God. It just made them the way God intended for all human beings to be, which is to be free from all sin. And they were until the fall. They had the complete suite, you might say, of the preternatural and supernatural gifts that God wanted all of us to have. They had enlightened intellects. This is before the fall. Their intellects and their wills were perfectly integrated. So that meant that their unruly appetites were not really unruly. They had command over their bodily appetites. They saw things clearly. We don't. Our intellects have been dimmed, have been darkened to some extent as a result of the fall. They didn't have concupiscence. They did not have this disordered inclination towards sin that results from the passions of the body and the mind. They didn't have that to contend with as we do. So that's what makes their sin so heinous, is that they didn't have any of those encumbrances that we have to deal with, because they could see so clearly and they had mastery over their will, etc., and their appetites. So what happened was, or the will had the mastery over the appetites. So that's what made their sin so terrible, was it was made in the cold, sober, clearly illuminated situation where they knew what they were doing was contrary to God's law, and they did it anyway. Now, why is it that they could fall from that state of original grace and innocence, and the Blessed Virgin Mary did not? And it's a singular thing, and that is that as part of the blessing that God gave to the Blessed Virgin Mary when he created her, in the moment of her conception, he preserved her free from all sin. So not only was she not born in the condition of original sin, but she never sinned of her own volition. And this was part of that singular privilege that Adam and Eve did not have. They did not have the gift of perseverance in grace. They had to undergo a test. And the test, as we all know, was, are you going to obey God or disobey God? They failed the test. Just like, in a way, at least, the angels had to pass a test, all of them. And the good angels passed the test. The bad angels, the demons, they failed the test and were cast down. So were Adam and Eve cast down in terms of being expelled from the Garden of Eden. And in the fall, they lost many of those preternatural gifts and supernatural gifts. They lost grace. They lost immortality. They lost freedom from concupiscence, etc. But Our Lady didn't have those. And the reason is, getting back to that point, is because God, by a singular act, preserved her from it. So she did have free will. She's always had free will. But you might think of it as like a superabundance of grace in the Blessed Virgin Mary. It didn't stifle or eliminate her free will, but it made her so united with the will of God that it would be unthinkable, utterly unthinkable for her to do anything contrary to God. She's so ordered toward God's will and infused with the Holy Spirit. Just so many things we could say about this. These are all things that would have been true for all the rest of us had Adam and Eve not sinned. So that's the deciding issue. That's the distinctive difference between Our Lady and Adam and Eve. What do you think, Cyrus? How's that for an answer?
There's a lot there. I like it a lot. So Mary, you're saying she was incapable of sinning?
Well, not incapable, as if that were to mean that she was
no freedom
longer
of choice.
Right. Yeah, she wasn't, and she's not an automaton. She's not like an algorithm where it can only do what it's programmed to do. This is a mysterious thing, but we can still know some things about it. God's sovereign will preserved her in grace. And it was his gift to her. She didn't merit it. She wasn't even in existence before he created her. But from all eternity, God knew that he would create Mary in this way, to be the mother of the Redeemer. He didn't have to. It wasn't required. It wasn't necessary, but it was fitting and appropriate that he would do that. And that's the difference, is that Adam and Eve did not have that inviolable preservation from sin. So she wasn't straitjacketed. She wasn't forced to love God. She had the freedom, but it was at such a higher level. And forgive me, Cyrus, but this is an analogy that I come to when I think about this issue. Would you go to your home sometime and just burn it down and everything in it? And for good measure with your family in it. Would you ever go burn your house down?
Of course not.
Of course not. But does that mean you don't have free will?
I see.
Yeah. You have free will, right?
I'm perfectly capable of burning down my house, but I'm not going to.
You're not. It would be unthinkable.
It is
right?
unthinkable, right?
Unthinkable. But that doesn't mean you don't have free will, does it?
No, I still have free will.
Yeah, you still have free will. You could, theoretically.
That's a good analogy.
I think so. I think it's helpful because it's like the last thing you would ever do. You would never burn your house down. You love your house. You love what's in your house. You love your family. And let's assume they're all in there. You love your dog at a lesser degree, obviously. But I find it helpful because this helps us see that you can indeed have free will and you can choose with your free will to do anything. But you would never even think about doing this because it's so contrary to all that you love. And I would say this is true of Our Lady, but at an even higher level, in the level of grace. So you feel better about that question now?
I do, yeah. And I'm pondering the connection between Adam and Eve, Mary, and angels.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it in that kind of context before. How close were Adam and Eve to being angels?
Well, they were not close at all because, assuming I'm answering the question you're really asking, so as human beings, we have a nature made by God that is, we are a composite creature of body and soul. Our bodies are made for our souls, and our souls are made for bodies. So we learn things, we receive information through our senses, which requires a body, what we see and taste and hear and touch, etc. Angels are utterly unlike us in that regard. So they're like us insofar as they and we are like God. We have, like God does, we have an intellect and a will. With the intellect, we know what is true. With the will, we choose what is good, or we choose what is bad with the corruption of our will. But that's the way in which we're like God. And we're like the angels in that regard. We're personal beings who can know and love. We have an intellect and a will. But the angels are utterly unlike us in that they're pure spirits. They don't speak with a mouth or hear with ears or see things with eyes. Those bodily, corporeal sense organs that we have and that we need in order to function as human beings. Our nature as human beings is utterly different. We reproduce. We have male and female. Angels are not like that at all. So that they have no bodies. They don't require any sensory input to know. They just know things immediately because they're pure spirits. They know them fully also. We as humans have to reason our way toward conclusions, trial and error. Angels are not like that. They know instantaneously all that can be known one way or the other about something. They don't procreate, and they don't have gender differences. There's no male angels or female angels. They're more like God than we are in that regard because God is neither male nor female. This entire episode of the Patrick Madrid Show is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. Don't delay. Download the app today. And thanks for listening.